The latest round of Gaza ceasefire negotiations still underway. Hamas is seeking guarantees that a new U.S. proposal will lead to the war's end, while Israeli officials said prospects for reaching a ceasefire deal and hostage deal appear high. It's been nearly 21 months since the war between Israel and Hamas began. Let's cross to our correspondent, Noga Taran-Polsky, in Jerusalem for the latest. Noga, what new details have we gleaned on the conditions of the ceasefire?
We've gleaned a number of important details in the last 24 hours or so. And one of those details is external, and it's simply the fact that what we are hearing from Qatari and Egyptian media about their mediation efforts and what we're hearing here on the Israeli side, for the first time it seems to accord. We appear to be talking about a 60-day ceasefire with the possibility of renewal. And U.S. guarantees that Israel will not return to war as long as talks are ongoing. And in that period, we're speaking of Hamas releasing 10 living Israeli hostages out of the 50 who are being held in 3 different release dates, still to be determined, and the bodies of about 18 dead Israeli hostages. The assumption in Israel is that somewhere between 20, 22, maybe 23 of the hostages are still alive, although news that the Israeli cabinet received yesterday from the chief of staff of the army indicates that some of those thought to be alive in the last few weeks may no longer be alive, that they're being very severely tortured. While obviously these details that we're hearing offer some hope for a ceasefire, for humanitarian aid being able to get into Gazans, and for the release of these hostages, I want to quote the Israeli radio station Galei Tzahal that referred to this as a torture agreement. The reason being that at least 10 to maybe 13 living hostages who have already been held for 636 days and are apparently in catastrophic condition will still be held indefinitely at the end of those 60 days.
Noga, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, he's visited the Kibbutz Nir Oz for the first time since the October 7th attacks. Can you tell us more about this visit and its significance?
Yes, let's start with Kibbutz Nir Oz, which is a special place. It has an important place in the history of the state of Israel. It was one of the outposts that fought for Israeli independence against the Egyptian army back in 1948. And the entire community, the entire commune, is defined as a botanic garden. It's an internationally renowned oasis, and especially with succulents and cactuses. So it's a very special place, special in many ways. The Prime Minister visited it today for the first time, entering through the back gate. This is a community that was completely ravaged on October 7th, 2023. It lost more than 1/4 of its inhabitants to murder and to kidnapping. And there have been a long series of complaints for almost 2 years now about why the Prime Minister has never come to visit. He came today. He slunk in through a side entrance in his armored vehicle. He was received, from what we hear, politely by those residents who agreed to meet him, but there were protests outside the front gate. And some of the residents, among them most famously, I think, Uma Kedem, a very renowned fashion designer in Israel, who lost her daughter, her son-in-law, her co-grandmother, her in-law, and her 3 grandchildren on October 7th, who were all murdered. She led a protest demanding that the Prime Minister not be allowed to step foot. The community is still completely wrecked, and we're still waiting. He just left. We're still waiting to hear any more news that will emanate from that visit.
Right, just an example of the very mixed feelings around the war and the ceasefire negotiations. Noga, I want to also ask about the humanitarian situation on the ground in Gaza, because it is incredibly bleak. A UN expert called it apocalyptic today, and Gaza's health ministry says at least 118 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces in just the last 24 hours. What is going on here? Is this intensity of strikes somehow part of an Israeli strategy? Because international groups are calling it a genocide.
Yes, some are. I think that one of the main things to say is that we don't really know what's going on. The Israeli army is being very cagey. It does detail to us every day, every few hours, specific operations it engages in, but we don't have details. And there appears to be, to the best of my knowledge, no real strategy in Gaza except to continue wrecking wrecking Hamas infrastructure and maybe the rest of Gaza, and to continue to strike whoever is left of the Hamas leadership. But the army, via the same chief of staff I mentioned to you before, the Israeli army is demanding that the Israeli government make a decision. The chief of staff of the army said that there's nothing more for the army to do. This is what we're hearing. He said yesterday to the cabinet that there's nothing more for the Israeli army to do in Gaza, either to engage in a vast new phase of this war or to aim for a diplomatic agreement. And that is what the White House appears to hope to impose on Netanyahu. Among the 118 killed that we heard today from the Hamas authorities in Gaza, we also heard that at least 12 were killed trying to get humanitarian aid from the hubs of this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, an Israeli established outfit that has really, I would say, been a disaster in getting not enough aid and leaving these routes open for people to be targeted by Israeli soldiers, by Hamas, maybe by marauding gangs as they're trying to get help. We heard from the Israeli army 3 days ago now that they were going to review and change those routes, how people can get to try and get aid, but we have not heard of any concrete yet.